Okay, great. Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm Fabricio from Integer Research, and I'm taking over the chairing for the afternoon, and I'll be running our discussions on on-road mobile machinery. We've got two sessions on, for the day, one on emissions regulation, and then a second one on more on technology solutions. And we'll have the first one, break, and then the second one. Before we start, just one information on the more the practical side of things. We have the dinner tonight. I understood we are fully booked. So if you have confirmed by email that you are coming to the dinner, please go to the reception desk when you have a chance or during the break. If you have not confirmed, then just wait for now and we'll learn later if there will be places. That's it. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Great. So let's kick off with the first session on emission standards. And it will be my presentation. I'm going to be sharing Integer's view on non-road markets. As you might know, Integer has been doing research on SCR, vehicles, equipment at blue markets for more than 10 years now. And in order to understand these markets, we have to carry out some detailed analysis of the current trends. So I'm going to be sharing some of our analysis and thoughts for the non-road segment. As an introduction, we've got a series of publications. This is our current portfolio of publications on SCR and AdBlue markets, and there are some reports on the global SCR automotive grade area markets. Then we have some regional studies, including a study on the China SCR and AdBlue markets, a monthly newsletter called The Monitor, and finally a report which is the third on the upper row, called Emissions Control in Non-Road Mobile Machinery Markets, which was done in partnership with KGP, a consultancy also based in London. And it was from these publication, from this report, that I've taken most of the elements for this presentation. So here's an introduction just to get the ground of things. This is a list of the main types of equipment covered in our report. We say we cover 95 plus percent of global equipment sales. We cannot say we do 100%, mainly because lower than 19 kilowatts power band, it's not as easy as to track. But but then below 19, they're not regulated by any current standards. So we cover the large majority of the regulated no-road equipment. And then, just to make things simpler to analyze, we group these equipment in 5 different, by industry, by application. The main ones are agriculture, construction, and material handling. But then, much lower volumes, we also look at mining and forestry equipment. Although it's a global report, it's important to look at each region separately. Countries, there are significant differences across regions and countries in the no-road markets, in terms of industries, equipment size, emission standards. So we look at each region separately, and then we aggregate numbers at some point. So in China, just a very quick overview of 2016, we saw construction equipment volumes decreasing and agricultural equipment as well, for different reasons. The agricultural side, it's mainly low commodity prices that are kind of preventing investment in new machinery. On the construction side, it's more after a sequence of a few years where sales have been very high, we saw some kind of overstocking, and because it's a market that is driven by replacement, we would expect at some point to see sales decreasing anyway. For 2021, the outlook is rather positive for China. We expect some recovery in both segments, but probably not to the levels that they were in 2011-12. In another slide, we'll look at volumes, and I think it's going to be easy to understand why. So these are our projections for global non-road sales. We estimate sales in 2016 around 3 million units globally. And there are different ways of seeing this chart. But the main thing is, even if volumes have been decreasing since 2013 year on year, and we don't think volumes would change drastically for 2017, it's going to be roughly at the level of 2016. The level has still been pretty high. We haven't got to as low as we saw in 2008, 9, 10. So volumes remain high, and we see a very gradual and slow increase over the next few years, jumping from 3 million in 2016-17 to a market of 3.5 million units per year, approximately, in 10 years. And then looking just at volumes for the Chinese market. The Chinese market has been following roughly the same trend, the same pattern as that we see for the global picture. But I think the most remarkable thing here is what we see happening with construction equipment. Volumes have been now much lower than what we saw in 2010 to 12, 13. And we saw a significant decrease in 2016, continuing through 17, 18, and then some recovery in the latter part of the forecast. But it's important to understand that these volumes, particularly the ones in the beginning of the decade, they were more a consequence of an extensive infrastructure support program from the government that started in 2008-9, and this program led to economic growth in China and kept demand for construction equipment at a very high level. Without this program now, there's no market demand just based on replacement of old machinery to sustain these levels. This said, we look at yesterday sales in the first quarter of 2017, which are not reflected in this chart yet. And then we saw a strong pickup already in 2017. So maybe the outlook is likely to be even more positive than what we are currently seeing for China. And then to that gradual increase in volumes that we see in the second from 2018 onwards. There are other factors also driving this increase. I would mention on the agricultural side, there have been higher levels of mechanization for harvesting, and also there's a slow shift from two-wheeled to four-wheeled tractors. And all these is playing some play a role in this market forecast. And finally, if you look in terms of power band, that's another analysis that we bring for all regions in our report. For China, we see that we group equipment into 8 different power bands, and we see that more than half of the market is below 56 kilowatts. Next slide is going to start talking about legislation, but as you know, it's from 56 kilowatts up that we see tighter NOx levels, and it's where we see a higher use of after-treatment SCR. Just to mention, these 44% on 37 to 56 kilowatts, we're mainly talking about forklifts, smaller harvesters, and some of the small agricultural tractors, just to illustrate a bit more. Great, so moving to the regulatory framework now. We can see, I'm really sorry, fonts are quite tiny there, and hopefully in the smaller screens you can read a bit better. But what we can see is, just based on colors and what we know, is there has been some harmonization between Europe and North America, which are the 2 first rows in the chart. There was some transition between 13, 14 for the implementation of standards, but now both Europe and North America have very comparable standards. Europe is on stage 4, and North America is on tier 4 final. China is is the 6th row or 7th, and we would say China is like 2 steps behind. I'm really sorry. Yeah, apologies for this. So China is 2 steps behind. Current GB3 standards, they are based on EU stage 3A, and we understand there's a move to 3B planned for 2020, so in a few years' time already, and we'll be talking much more about 3B. That is called is going to be called China 4. But and that's going to be the main topic of discussion in the next presentations and in the panel. and then the other thing I'd like to illustrate from this chart is that like for on-road vehicles, because there are differences between urban centers and countrywide in terms of fuel quality, in terms of usage of equipment. There has been some differences in legislation, and we see, for example, in China, Beijing is at a different level of legislation compared to the rest of the country. But that harmonization that Europe and North America reached in 2015 is not going to last for very long, because Europe has now implemented has now approved stage 5 to be implemented between 2019 and 2020. So I've just brought, and based on conversations we've been having here at the conference, we understand that the most likely scenario for China is to, after the move to an Europe 3B, is to skip Europe 4 and implement Europe stage 5, but we're talking about 7-8 years from now. The main things brought by stage 5 are, first of all, a tighter PM limits. It doesn't change much for NOx, There's the introduction of a particle number limit as well for the 19 to 560 kilowatt power band, and that is in practice going to mandate the use of DPFs for all these equipment. And then stage 5 also expands the coverage. There are some equipment that were not covered by the previous regulation and that is going to be covered now, and particularly equipment below 19 kilowatts or above 560, the generation sets and so on. Great. So where have OEMs been so far to meet these standards? This is a very simple timeline where we show how SCR was introduced in the European and North American markets. With stage 3A in Europe, tier 3 in the US, it was mainly Agco that was using SCR. We didn't see the others were mainly starting with EGR only. In 2011, when tier 4 intermediate or stage 3B were implemented, then we saw other manufacturers, and then even if it wasn't a mandatory strategy, there was some manufacturers decided to introduce SCR to favor a better fuel consumption. But it was mainly with the introduction of Tier 4 final in North America and EU Stage 4 in Europe that the other main manufacturers added SCR. So now, again, this is more to illustrate there are exceptions in some of the cases, but now we see the large majority of manufacturers using SCR for equipment between 56 and 506 kilowatts. But there are still differences, and quite significant differences, in terms of what else comes as an after treatment. So there are manufacturer choices that also relate to the type of equipment, to the size of equipment, and to the industry it is going to be used. But we still see a wide range of options. And if we want to look a step ahead, what is likely to happen in stage 5 in Europe, so 2019, 2020, we see much fewer differences this time because of the low NOx levels, low PM levels, and the particle number introduction. We see most OEMs going with SCR and DPF. The question is then which ones are going to be with or without with EGR, and which ones are going to be without EGR. So there are still some difference, but fewer than for what we currently see for stage 4. And then based on these analysis, we can go back to our volume analysis. So we start looking at after treatment production forecasts in our reports. And then it's interesting to see how different regions are, where things are happening in different regions. This is our EGR production forecast. And what we can see, it's mainly Europe that's going to see a higher use of EGR over the forecast period. But, and then we also see some significant volumes coming from China from 2020 onwards with the introduction of China 4, Europe 3B equivalent. For DPF, it's mainly Europe, which is the yellow beige bars, and that's mainly because with the introduction of stage 5, we can see a strong uptick in the use of DPF in Europe, and also some DPF in the Chinese market, which is the blue bar, the large blue bar on top. That's coming with the introduction of 3B. Him just going into the detail of that tiny blue bar on top, representing China. And what we have in our forecast is we assume that volumes we are going to see higher, some SCR coming into the Chinese market, but volumes are considerably, nearly zero now, but we see things coming, not too much in 2020 with the next step, but with the implementation of a new a stage 4 or 5 equivalent, more in the latter part of our forecast. These two charts, they showed SCR sales. Our analysis goes further from SCR sales. We look at the SCR population that we call the SCR park fleet, and that fleet is what drives AdBlue consumption in this segment. So it's not just sales; it's the cumulative sales that is going to be consuming AdBlue in any year of this forecast. So this is our forecast for global AdBlue consumption in the non-road segment. And as expected, there are going to be more SCR equipment on the roads, so we would expect AdBlue consumption to continue growing over time. But it is going to be primarily in Europe and North America, and that's okay. These are the markets selling more SCR equipment now, but also these are the markets where SCR has already been implemented for a while, and these cumulative volumes will drive a higher AdBlue consumption. For China, these volumes are expected to develop over time as well. Not really before 2020, as we saw. There's the likelihood. It's quite unlikely to see large volumes of SCR equipment being sold in China over the next couple of years. But volumes can rise quite quickly. In 10 years, we forecast an AdBlue consumption of approximately 250 million liters, which, to give an idea, is roughly half of the current AdBlue market for on-road vehicles in China. I'm not going to talk too much about AdBlue because we have a full day tomorrow talking about the AdBlue market for trucks and buses. And we do this forecast with a breakdown by segment, and we see it's mainly going to be construction equipment driving this consumption, mainly because on the agricultural side, most of the Chinese equipment is below 56 kilowatts. Of course, because we're forecasting, we have to deal with scenarios. One scenario would be what would happen if stage 5, Europe stage 4 or 5 is implemented earlier. So we assume if volumes picked up, if stage 5 was implemented in 2020 instead of a 3B equivalent, then there would be more SCR on the, equipment on the market earlier, and consequently much higher AdBlue consumption. And in 10 years' time, then we could be talking about an AdBlue consumption 4 to 5 times higher for the segment. And this would, which would probably represent something on 15 to 20% of the total AdBlue demand in 10 years. Great. With these, I conclude my presentation. As I said, we have all these elements in our non-road mobile machinery report. If you have questions, chat to me or to anyone from Integer. There are brochures on our table over there as well. and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you very much. Yeah. So